Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader. Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. It's David Horsager, and I have an expert of experts with us today. Hey, welcome, Dr. Jeffrey Magee.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you again. Appreciate the opportunity just to sit down and visit with you.
Hey, I really appreciate this. You know, there was something when we got to know each other in an association in our industry. You know, I signed up for something I have not signed up for since. I've been there every year. It was maybe 20 years ago. But there was something called Table with the Experts, or Listen to an Expert, or something. So I signed up for this thing, and I could be in a round table, you know, with an expert. And the expert at my table was Dr. Jeffrey Magee, and I will never forget that. So just a little bit about him. He's leading Leadership and Marketing Strategist. He's the author of more than 20 books. Some of his latest books, Trajectory Code, The Managerial Leadership Bible, 20 more books than that. He is the publisher of Performance, the magazine. Thanks for spotlighting me sometimes in there and our work. And he has a host of credentials, but he's really a leader of leaders and an expert thought leader in many of these spaces. You and I agree on this. Like, we like research-based. We don't want cheesy motivation.
Bingo.
And yet we want to make it simple and usable tomorrow morning so it can make a difference. And so Absolutely. I appreciate that about you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, give us a little start here before we get into it. What are a couple things not many people know about Dr. Jeffrey Magee?
I don't know. Those are great questions. I was raised on a farm in Colorado. I've been on Air Force One with President Reagan. I was the last person to interview Dr. Seuss before he passed away. And I went to college as an athlete and quickly realized being a high school athlete is different than being with the real athletes, and had to back up and say, okay, what's my next career path?
I like that. Oh, that's fun. What was we're on the Trusted Leader Show. We can't let that go. What was it like being with President Reagan?
So in 1984, I worked for a publication on the East Coast, and it gave me a chance to step outside of the box of normal journalism and look for unique people. And the approach on that one was actually, at the time, the pilot of Air Force One was blood brother relative to the gentleman who was responsible for the Secret Service detail protecting the president. So that was my angle. We were at the White House shooting some pictures. The president came in, saw his pilot there, kind of thought that was weird. Why is my pilot at the White House? Came over, you know, you kind of hard to say, no, you can't walk over. He's going to come over. And so it was very awe experiencing, basically. Great person, very approachable, very magnetic. Just instantly you were at ease in his space. Obviously you're stunned, but you're at ease. So it was a phenomenal experience. Brilliant gentleman.
Yeah. Wow. And tell me something, you know, as long as you start, I wasn't going to go here, but, you know, this is kind of fun. What is something that stood out in your last interview with Dr. Seuss?
Well, you know, again, same angle, same approach. Dr. Seuss was a fascinating gentleman, very to the point sort of responses in the questions. Wasn't really a good conversationalist. It's like you'd ask the question, he'd answer. It's like, okay, that's all you're getting. But some of the unique.
But it always rhymed with green eggs and ham. So
exactly. So some unique things that came out that I didn't realize at the time. Every one of his books are political books, and I didn't realize that. He said, you know, if you look at the print date line of when it was first released and think about what's going on in the world, the book is designed to get people to think about at that time what was going on in the world. So it's fascinating. I didn't realize that. Second, he never had children. He married a lady that had kids. He lived in a lighthouse. He was a graphic artist on New York City before World War II, basically. Theodore Geisel was his name, and he basically wasn't having much success. So after World War II, he came back and he flipped it, used his mom's maiden name, gave himself the moniker of doctor, and started marketing himself as Dr. Seuss, and the rest is history. So a lot of interesting nuggets came out.
That's fun. I love that. Well, there's a lot we can cover today, but I think, you're definitely an expert in management and leadership. And I think one place I want to start, even though it might sound big and then come into some of our work around trust and everything, but I think a lot of people wonder, at least I do, how do you actually change individuals? And then I want to go into how do we change the culture of organizations. But, you see people, they say they want to change, they set a goal, they do this, but they don't actually, very few people. I was talking about this morning, actually, habit change. I used to do this, I used to ask people, how many of you have actually changed wanted to change a habit? There's, of the audience, 100%. I wanted to change a habit. I wanted to change all of them, some kind of difficult habit. And then I ask, how many of you ever have? Like a habit of losing 30 pounds or more, stopping smoking, some habit that was kind of difficult. Maybe 6%. It's not easy.
Very difficult.
What are some of the things that, that actually help people actually change a habit? How do you help them?
So in my leadership work, we actually have some formulas, and I'm big on formulas. I think life is nothing but a formula. If you had an older brother or sister when you were a child and you saw how they did things, you studied it and you mimicked them, and then you maybe tweaked it and made it your own approach. If you had an older brother or sister that did something that got caught, you kind of realized, okay, I got to change the formula here. I don't want to get myself in trouble. Add 30 years, now you're an adult, it's the same thing. So really it's about what's the formula. We are creatures of habit, thus the adage. And so once you realize how you do things, and you like it, you can double down. If you realize how you do things and you don't like it, then you can start to reverse analyze and change the habit. So here's some of the formulas I would share with our viewers. One of the things I talk about in my recent book, Your Trajectory Code, is I make a statement from the stage when I'm talking at large conventions or working in leadership development in a small group. And I say, folks, I'm going to say something here that's going to challenge conventional wisdom. The difference between failure and success is nothing. The difference between failure and success is nothing. Everyone talks about, to be more successful, and they want to sell you the whatever. And so let's back this up and think about from a performance psychology standpoint. Here's the point. 5 words you can write down. These will take you to disaster. Same 5 words will take you to success. Therefore, the difference between failure and success is nothing. It's a matter of how you channel these 5 words, which goes to, in essence, your question. So think of it this way. We all learn how to do things. So that would be the word behavior. We could write down behavior on the old whiteboard at the front of the room, as they say. Then underneath of that, there's 4 additional words. So training and development, just like what you do around the Trusted Leader programming, what I do around leadership development, we train people on behaviors because, again, fill in the blank with wherever you want to go with the conversation. But once you learn how to do something behaviorally, that's a conscious activity. Then it starts to become subconscious. So the word below behavior is habit. It starts to become a habit. The more you do it, or the more it's, compliance-based training and you got a checklist holding you accountable. Then once it starts to become a habit, it starts to slide to your subconscious brain. It's kind of like, okay, I got it. I don't really have to pay attention. Once it goes to that second word of habit, then it goes to the third word, which I call personal SOP, a personal standard operating procedure. Once something migrates from behavior to habit forming to personal SOP means now it's pretty much ingrained in your subconscious and it's autopilot. People sometimes, if you drive to work, again, you leave home, you're paying attention. Next thing you realize you're getting out of the car at work and you go, holy crap, I don't even remember the drive. That's your third level. So those elements. Same thing in a business, we do that. Then once it hits that third level, I draw a line on the whiteboard and I said, so now what happens? It goes to the 4th word. And the 4th word is basically ownership. We take ownership of the way we do things. We start to push away any stimulant, any information, anyone that might challenge that pathway, that pathology, that habit, that behavior, that personal SOP. And then once you get to that level, then you wrap emotion. The 5th word is emotion. You wrap emotion around it. So now you're offended and you're defensive and you're on guard. Anyone comes in and says, David, that's the wrong way of doing it. And notice I'm even pointing my finger because that's usually how the words come off because that's what happened when we were kids. So if you think about those five can take you to failure. Transfer those words to the positive column. It's the exact same pathology to success. So the difference is now we can go even deeper with Trusted Leader or with leadership work that I do through my Leadership Academy of Excellence programming is how you create the change. I'll give you 3 more words in a minute, which is going to be the secret sauce, everybody. But you have to recognize, again, if I start out wherever and I want to create the right behaviors from the beginning, or I want to get people to maybe adjust their behaviors a little bit or change them completely, you have to have checkpoints like little gates. How do you know if you're on track? If I do this, it gets me to this checkpoint or gate, and then I go through it and I go to the next step. What are those key performance indicators that can validate if you're on track or off track that we use in business? So then another overlay to making sure those 5 words you've written down don't take you to disaster, but take you to success is going to be what's the accountability mechanisms? What's the accountability partners you have? Or what sort of a cohort do you have? Do you have a coach or a champion or a mentor? All those words we use in business, but now we're putting together architecturally to make sense. See, again, if you want to change behavior, just as you said, stop smoking or lose weight, it actually is easy to do if you build the architecture necessary to create change. The problem is we start off with the right intention, but we don't have all the architecture there, so we get in trouble. You go to a nice restaurant, they bring you out a meal, and wow, there's a lot of food. So we're kind of taught here, clean your plate off. But most meals that are delivered to you are really probably enough to have like 2 or 3 sittings out of them. So freak out the wait staff. As soon as they deliver your meal, say, hey, this looks great. Could you bring me, like right now, a to-go box? And they're going to look at you weird. And so when they bring it over, take half the food off your plate. Well, if it's a restaurant you go to on a regular basis, involve that restaurant to help you. Don't cut back the food portion. Say, hey, I'm ordering this. When it comes out, bring it out beautifully, have a to-go box behind your backs and hand that to me. So now you're holding me accountable to breaking it down. That's a simple, silly example, but we don't put the accountability steps in there. And that's why we get in trouble. Second and last answer, and then I'll give you the 3 steps to change that I've come up with, is then you have to incentivize yourself with the other person. And again, if you build compensation in business around performance excellence, you'll get more of it. In the United States, we've actually calibrated people to be lazy and pathetic. And then those words sometimes offend people, so I have to bring some Gallup research in to prove it. Again, they have found that roughly, 56% of workers are disengaged, complacent, or you can be more harsh and just say that they're worthless. But people don't become worthless overnight. They're pushed that way. 15% are actively against anything. And those are your cancer cells in an organization. I've written about those. So if you do the math, 29% of any demographic are proactively engaged. Study any successful business, they figured out how to hire the 29 percenters and incentivize the 29 percenters. Again, if you're an employee-based organization that has ownership, then everyone understands how to save every penny you can, because at the end of the day, if we're all employee owners, that's what happens at the end of the day. You get paid at the end of the day, not the beginning of the day. Right now, everyone gets paid at the beginning of the day, and we have challenges. So a lot of response to your question about how do you create the change, or what's the pathology to get there. But if I were to back it up, let me give you my 3 macro answers. If you want to create change, you get people to buy into doing something new or different. Step 1, I've learned, is the word awareness. Think about it, Dave. You and I have these smartphones that we now use. Everyone has a smartphone. And if you take your smartphone and you think about, if you're searching something on the internet and you find it and you click to go to that information, we're held hostage today by that 6-second advertising commercial that pops up, and you can't get to where you want to go until it counts down. And then when it says skip, boom, you hit skip. These 3 words I'm giving to you, you can test it right now when you're done with this podcast. Just pick up your cell phone. If you search for something, the ad pops up. They have 6 seconds to do these 3 words. And if they do these 3 words, you'll tend to keep watching that ad for a couple more seconds. But if they don't do these 3 words, you're going to hit abort, skip, and go to where you want to go. So here's a quick way to test how to create change. First step is awareness, and awareness deals with 2 words: what and why. If I want to get David to create change in anything, his department, his team, himself, then the first thing I have to slow down and speak to is I've got to get David's brain wrapped around what I'm talking about and why it's important, what I'm talking about and why it has an impact on you. Because if I don't, I may be mentally and talking about step 2, but your brain's still step 1. See, we use this buzzword, getting people to buy in. I'm giving you the roadmap of what buy-in's all about. Buy-in has to be first on what we're talking about and why, which is awareness. Second step then is engagement. And engagement, number 2, deals with all the HOWs. So if David, if I have a 100-point PowerPoint slide, and on slide 10, you understand what I'm talking about and why, then I don't want to show the next 90 slides trying to make my case for one, because now I'm going to turn you off. I need to instantly go to number 2, engagement. Our brain then wants to know how to do this, how to fix this, how to solve this, how to adjust, how to accommodate. And if we make the HOW so incredibly easy with support mechanisms like what I just talked about a minute ago for the 5 steps, then our brain will instantly go to step 3 to change. And there's only 3 steps to change. Awareness deals with what and why. Engagement deals with how. And the third step is commitment. And commitment deals with the who and the when. So WHEN. People will convert and change if we show them and make the case for 1, 2, and then 3. The problem is we're wanting everyone to be at 3 because you and I spent time last night as executives getting our brain wrapped around 1 and 2. We spent all night getting our brain wrapped around 1 and 2. And then you want to send an email in 3 seconds and expect them to go from 1, 2 to 3. So huge.
Hey, it's Ann with the Trust Edge team here. As you know, we are passionate about helping you and your team perform at your best. And that's why David wrote his new book, Trusted Leader. This true-to-life parable follows the story of a CEO who uncovers the root issue threatening his organization's success. And in the back half of the book, David provides a roadmap for even how to solve those root issues. Get Trusted Leader for your team, your organization, or even just for yourself at trustedleaderbook.com.
Let's take that another level. So that's a human. I mean, I think this really gets in, our work around how to get to absolute clarity of how we do something. We ask how until we can act on it today or tomorrow. But let's take a big company like you and I've worked in. Let's take or a corporate, or a country in East Africa. We're trying to cut down corruption issues, right? Or we're trying to change the culture of a big company. We won't name them. But how do we apply this to cascading through a big company? I think it makes sense. Like, okay, we got to get awareness around a common language. Then we got to, it makes sense. But are there any just a couple tips to think about how would I drive change in a group, a team, or even an organization?
Powerful. Okay. So that conversation right there could, you and I could sit down and visit on that one all day long and still just be touching the surface. So I have a couple responses to that one. I think one, let's start with one of the words you just used, which was common language. It is amazing in how many organizations, or as you said, countries, we don't have common language. So I'm going to answer your question, David, but it's going to be a little controversial for some people that have, in essence, minimalist ears. I'm about to hurt and blow their brain up. Number one, common language to a business is non-negotiable. Common language in a business should be non-negotiable. The key people that have created the company or own the company or making the company possible for me or you to become an employee in, the common language is what keeps everyone together. And if someone comes into that organization and they want us to change the language to accommodate them, then no, you need to say, hey, the beauty of the capitalist system is there's the door, walk at it, and there's 9,000 other places to go. The rise and fall of every civilization. There's not many history majors left on the planet. Unfortunately, our K-12 system has produced idiots for the past 30 years that they think rhetoric is a fact. The rise and fall of every civilization and thus every business is based upon common language. We have the same common language. It gives us our ability to stick together. You start attacking that common language, introducing 9,000 other variations, you get in trouble. So that's the first point, which is going to be very uncomfortable with people. So again, unless you're a billionaire, think about what I've just said. See, every billionaire will challenge my comment. The Bill Gates, the Zuckerbergs, and et cetera. It's easy when you're a billionaire to have socialistic ideas. Go back and look when they were building the business. They didn't have one of those. I hate to pop the bubble. Look at the history. So that's one is common language. Very sensitive topic. It's everyone stressed out. Number two, then, values. Your values will dictate your common language. Your common language will dictate your values, and the two are interconnected. What are your values? So if I want to bring an organization together, part of your question, I want to create change within it, what are the common values? Because your common values will give you a way to, with grace and dignity and to be polite, to allow people to come into that circle or to politely say, look, this is just not the right place for you. No disrespect, but it's just not the right place for you. Go create your own business or go to another one. See, that's the second place we get in trouble. What's the values? There's a lot of great examples. Woolworth. If no one knows Woolworth, write it down. There's your homework lesson. Montgomery Ward's. You don't know that one? Write it down. There's your homework lesson. Sears and Roebuck. You don't know that one? Write it down. There's your homework lesson. Kmart. You don't know it? Write it down. There's your homework lesson. If I just use those four for the past 100 years, if they understood, stay core to your values, keep your common language and understand what you're doing, Amazon and Walmart wouldn't exist today, because Amazon and Walmart are the same thing as a Woolworth. They delivered a product, a commodity. All that happened was the distribution system needed to be evolved. They didn't evolve and they disappeared. So again, there's really nothing new for the young viewers today. It's everything that's been out there. It's evolving. So second is language. First is language. Second is values. The third way you get through it is then how do you keep score? Number three, write that down. How do you keep score? See, that's the other problem is that we have multiple scorecards we use in an organization, whether you call those, performance reviews or how you compensate or what are your goals, how do you signpost along the road of life to know if you're on track or ahead of schedule, behind schedule, whether you bring your, project managers in and they start doing Gantt charts and Lean Six Sigma and Scrum teams. I mean, so you can add all these words in there, but if you peel it back, it goes into the skeletal framework. what's your scorecard? Because the scorecard gives everyone the lanes of how they're going to be measured, what we need to do, and how we contribute to the overall organization. And it keeps everyone honest. If you don't have scorecards, you have 9,000 different languages and interpretations of our values. So I would say the third is going to be your scorecard. Fourth, how do you compensate and how do you incentivize? Two elements, but it all deals with money at the end of the day. How do you compensate and how do you incentivize people? Because people will do what they're incentivized to do. And this, again, takes us down another lane. It can be very, very controversial. But again, just take a look in society. And sometimes we step back and go, how is it these people do this? Why is it they're allowed to do this? Well, it's because that's how they're being compensated, incentivized, or that's the scorecard that someone's not holding them accountable to or that they're using, which goes to the values they have or don't have, which goes to the language they're using. I mean, all of this stuff's interconnected. Wow. And we can keep on going.
There we go. I love it. Oh my goodness. We could go into all kinds of things. Well, we got to talk a little bit because we know all of our work around trust and how, we believe a lack of trust is the biggest cost of an organization. Everybody's heard that. Lack of trust is the biggest expense. Everything of value is built on trust, and trust is always the leading indicator. Everything lags. It's not a leadership issue. We only follow a leader or not because of trust, unless it's a dictator, which isn't a leader.
Every time.
The only reason we buy or not
Absolutely.
is trust. It's not a sales issue. It's a trust issue, unless it's a commodity. It's not a marketing issue. The only way to amplify a marketing message is to increase trust. The only way to increase learning in a classroom is increase trust in the content, the teacher, or the psychological safety or trust of the room. The only way to deal with, on and on we go. Innovation goes up when trust goes up because people share ideas and creativity and all that. But you've thought about this. You've talked about it. What say you?
Yeah, it's powerful. I was on the phone this morning at 6 a.m. Pacific time, a coaching call with a C-suite executive for a $500 million ag client of mine in California. When I get done with this podcast, I'll be on a Zoom call with the CEO of a $4 billion financial group in North Carolina. What's interesting is that part of the conversation with both of them is exactly, David, what you just said. The issues all do come back to trust. So one organization, the trust is not that anyone has done anything negative. It's that this C-suite team have a lot of new players and they really haven't had a chance to really spend time getting to know each other. So again, the question I'd pose to the executives, when you're in your desk and you're faced with a challenge or an issue, whatever level that means of challenge or problem, who do you think of first in your head, or who do you think of first to go to get any counsel from? So that's going to be a fun exercise to see what they write down, because if the 8 of them don't have each other's names written down on that sheet of paper, then it gives us a clue. You're not leveraging the DNA of the senior bench of the organization, and that's a trust issue. So that's one element. The other organization of trust is because someone isn't living up to the scorecard. A second person isn't dealing with some of their toxic employees. A third person, in essence, is using double standards with who they keep, who they're not keeping, who they're promoting, who they're not. So you have a lot of different things going on that can impact trust. So I bring it back to this element. And again, you and I have some of the same DNA. So this may be a page out of your book because it's a page out of my book, and it's neither one of David or Jeff's. This is a page from someone that we met a long time ago. Think of trust as a bank account. Again, if you want to have a relationship with anyone, you could, whatever it is you're trying to do, just think of it as a bank account. When you think of a bank account, you have deposits in and withdrawals out. So if I want to establish trust, the mistake we make is that what David values as what creates trust may not be what Jeff Magee values. So you have to think of each person as their own bank account. So if I want to establish more trust with Jeff Magee, then what are the things that are of value to him? And if I do that, it establishes trust. So again, if I keep my word, if I'm on time, et cetera, those are all deposits. And again, we may sometimes not recognize we're doing it overtly or even consciously, but we're always withdrawing from accounts. So then I take it to the next step, David, and I say, think of it this way. Every bank today works the same way for most people. Now, this may be bad, but this is really what they're doing. Every bank, if you have a checking account or a debit account, gives you overdraft protection. And what that means is that for some reason, David, if I have an account with David's bank here, he has some sort of a reason to look at me because of my title, my stature, my age, or previous experience. He gives me overdraft protection, which means I can bounce a couple of checks before he gets mad. I can take some money out of the account where I don't really have money in it, and he'll let it float for a little while, but I got to put a deposit back in. The danger of that is that we now take that into relationships, and people sometimes forget you need to make deposits. And if that doesn't make sense, I take it to another level with clients or with audience. I say, okay, if you're a parent, raise your hand. If you think about it, you have a relationship with all of your kids. And do your kids sometimes take more than they actually give? Yes. And do you give your kids overdraft protection? Yes, you do. Do you have any kids over the age of 21 still living at home? Yes. You're giving them overdraft protection. Tell them to get their butt out of the house and go get a job. So I mean, we can make some joke lines, but people get it. So the answer comes down to think of your relationship with a vendor, with a client, with a customer, with a supplier, with a coworker, with your boss, with a virtual assistant, because the whole world is VA'd now, again, as a relationship. And so to me, there's 4 sides to healthy relationships in business. So one side is trust. That's what you own. Another side is assertiveness. A third side is motivation. And the base of this house is communication. So you've got to recognize what are the deposits in all 4 of these. And you've always got to be making deposits, not just making withdrawals. That is the way I try to get people to understand how you build these healthy relationships. It's huge.
Huge. I love it. Well, with 20 books and a whole lot more, I'm just going to make a couple of recommendations. Again, get the new one, Trajectory Code, but the Managerial Leadership Bible. Everybody managing needs to read that. If you lead anybody. So let's go to this. What are you learning these days? What's top of your mind these days?
You know, we have lots of buzzwords I'm finding coming out of this pandemic era globally that are not new words, but maybe we're getting some language on those. So, you know, innovation has always been out there. If you're an entrepreneur, you know, that's synonymous with innovation. So what I'm learning these days is really how to innovate everything I do to a level of 4. I've realized that people make changes based upon 1 or a combination of only 4. Therefore, my customers are looking at me to how I can help them to grow, develop, innovate, you know, be cutting edge, all those buzzwords. So what I'm learning is how to innovate based upon either better, faster, different, cost effective. That's the only 4 ways you're going to change a behavior is better, faster, different, cost effective. If I can show you that my whatever is more efficient for you, that might be the word faster, then you'll consider my idea, my program, coming to my meeting or et cetera. So I'm pushing myself to innovate at a factor of 4, which is better, faster, different, more cost effective at everything I do. I'm learning how to put profitability into not only relationships, but business. And I'm looking at profitability different. Not how do I get smarter with everything so at the end I have some money. I'm actually building profitability into the front side. So let's say I want to make $10 or I'm going to generate $10 in revenue. And I want $2 of profitability out of that. What I'm doing is I'm reversing the financial models we were taught in business school. And if I have $10, I'm going to take the first $2 as profit and figure out how do I then run everything on the next $8 and get my profitability squeezed out of that 8. I'm going Amazon on this. Everyone in essence, instead of about these billion-dollar companies, they're playing within the rules. They're not breaking any laws. But what they're doing, I realize, is that they're engineering their business after they've already decided what their profit they want to be. Then that's the money left over on the table. They run their business and they still squeeze profitability out the backside. Mm-hmm. See, most of us, we look at that whole $10 and try to be as efficient as we can to maybe get $2 at the end. I want to start if $2 is my goal. So innovation, level of 4, quick example.
Hey, it's Sam from the Trust Edge team. Most training and development initiatives don't last or even solve the root issue hindering your organization. That's where Trust Edge coaching certification comes in. Trust Edge coaches are equipped with a suite of tools to identify, benchmark, and close gaps in trust for good. Because when you solve the real issue, you get measurable results in a culture where people actually want to make an impact. So whether you're a coach with your own clients or a leader training people inside your organization, check out trustedgecoaching.com and see how you can start solving the root issue and get lasting results in your business. And now back to the show.
Is there anything else, just a quick another example of something you've seen? You know, we both walked by leaders and walked with leaders in the last 16 months. What's something you're noticing about those leaders and organizations that have done especially well over the last year and a half throughout the pandemic and this massive change?
Wow. So now, folks, everyone needs to shut up, sit down, and take a note, because David just took you right to the jugular. I'm charging clients tens of thousands of dollars to hear this answer, David. So I can't believe you asked that one. I actually have seen one incredibly obvious, clear answer. Every business that's thriving, I'm not even just talking about getting by. Every business that's thriving, their senior leadership team has sales revenue generation in their pedigree. Every business that's in trouble, their leadership team does not have sales revenue generation in their pedigree, which is what I mean I'm here in Las Vegas at the time we're recording this. 85% of the restaurants on the Las Vegas Strip are still not open. A year after the pandemic started, we've been through it and things are now opening up. And it's because all of those restaurants have phenomenal celebrity chef names behind them as entrepreneurs, but they don't understand revenue generation, how to sell. So again, what I'm now looking, if I go back in history and look at businesses, the C-suite, the majority of those executives, not all of them, somewhere in their lifespan, their pedigree, they were in sales, marketing, client development, outreach, the revenue generation jobs. And I've been talking about that for years in my leadership program. My core program is called the Leadership Academy of Excellence. I work with a business for 1 year minimum. 3 of those 12 months, we spend time drilling into revenue generation. And some leaders, when we get there, they don't understand why we're talking about it. Well, that's not my space. I go, no, yes, it is. And so COVID has become my world's best case study to prove my point I've been talking about.
I love it. Fascinating. Good stuff. Wow.
Thank you. It's been fun. That's been a fast 30 minutes, David.
That's a fast 30, but we got to give you, what's motivating you these days, by the way, from the, just to keep fun. On? You sold a big company after building a big, training development company. You're still speaking, sharing, writing. What's motivating you these days?
Finding real businesses and real people that really want to be successful. Their ego's not in the room. Yeah, ego's always going to be driving it, but the ego's not the first thing that walked in the room, and they're just trying to create that legacy. How do you make a room, a group, people, business better at the end of the day than it was at the beginning of the day? And if you look at it from that perspective, that's what's fun for me. I work with some phenomenal clients that truly are reminding me. I'm having real life experiences. If anyone's following me on LinkedIn, it's the only social media I play on. If you're following me, I'm learning success made all over again from phenomenal clients I have that are teaching me servant leadership in terms of what it really means, innovation in terms of what it really means, taking care of your people in terms of what it really means, but not being stupid about how you do any of those. So that's what gets me excited.
So let's get personal for just a few minutes before we wrap this thing together. What when you think about, at least when we talk about leadership, we talk about you got to lead yourself first. What are some things you're doing? Maybe it's routines, habits, or ways you're leading yourself. You're leading so many others, walking alongside so many others. I know for me, in coming, walking with some of these senior leaders, it's easy to take a lot of their weight and their challenges and all these issues. But if we're going to be doing that, we've got to do some things to keep our own. Maybe it's physical health, mental health. What are you doing?
So great questions. And you're right. People come to you and I strategically and surgically to help them, whether we're just on their consulting retainer list, so when they have a challenge they know we're in their pocket, whether we are really integrated into the organization. So you're on my level. That's a great question. So for me, I think the first answer is going to be the word discipline. You have to have the discipline today. Finish that sentence any way you want. So my discipline is, I get up around 4:30 every morning. My first business engagement activity is going to be by 6 a.m. every morning because the world is global and 24/7. So the discipline to be where my fun clients live and be there when and where they need me. But then I also do plug in, Jeff time. Again, for me, I've got a brother that loves motorcycles. I don't trust two wheels, so I'll just, drive my convertible. So for me, it's going out for a drive and just enjoying Mother Nature and what God's blessed us with. I mean, that absolutely may drive some people crazy, but that's a part of my discipline. I always go for a therapy drive every day or every couple of days. I do exercise. I mean, I'm not the athlete I was 40 years ago, 30 years ago, so I'm not even about to misrepresent and pretend, but I do a little exercise every day. Absolutely. But it's discipline. I have an accountability partner who holds me accountable to these elements, just as I'm an accountability partner and I help hold people accountable. So it's discipline, it's commitment, and it's focus. What's your vision and where are you wanting to go? And what are the clarity of those goals? And are you continuously working towards those? I think the mindset of some people, I want to retire one day. I'm not a subscriber of that. I think for some people, maybe so, but I think the planet has shifted. And for some people, you and I, I'm just going to assume into this. If I'm wrong, David, correct me, but I'm going to assume in that you and I were this way before the pandemic. What the beauty of the pandemic has done, good and bad, is it sniffed out and put the spotlight on a lot of low performers. And now they can't hide. It's given companies the ability to do what they didn't have the guts to do before the pandemic, which is they now could, they've had the ability to fire a ton of people and be legally, get away with it. But it's also put the spotlight on businesses and people to reevaluate what they want out of life and what they really want to do and what's really important. And I think a lot of things that were, in play the year before the pandemic, some of them are going to probably cease to exist because people really have had a chance to reevaluate. And so with that, back to, the last response to your question of me, I think for me and you and some people, the word retirement is never going to happen, not because we can't. I think for me, at least, and I'm going to assume, for our viewers, as much as I've interacted with David and we've been at conferences where we spoke together, not on the same stage, but you're in one room and I'm in the other. And I've come in and I've played student to learn from you many times as well. I love what I'm doing. So as long as God allows me to get vertical every day, I'm doing this because I love it at some level as long as I can. And I think that's kind of how I've rebooted, the next generation of me.
One piece of advice in a sentence.
Legacy. You are your own legacy. What is it that you want the second generation of people that you're touching to know about you? If you're a parent, your kids are not your legacy. Challenge your paradigm. Your kids are not your legacy. It's what your kids do and who your kids touch. That next generation is really your legacy. So for me, what's my legacy? It's not just what I do, but it's the people I can engage. What do they do with it? And how do they affect that next person they touch? Every day is legacy. If this was your last day on the planet, what would the videotape from birth to today show you've accomplished? Or did you completely waste away the time that was given to you?
Good advice. Good advice. Hey, before the final question, it's been the Trusted Leader Show. All the show notes, finding Dr. Jeffrey's books, and more about all the work he's doing, Performance Magazine, and more. You can find that trustedleadershow.com. Everything will be there in a bio on Dr. Jeff today. He's an amazing guy. I hope we get it. Do we get to see each other this summer?
Yes, we will both be at a couple conferences this summer. Yep. They're on my calendar too. So all absolutely.
Right. I'm looking forward to that. Hey, before we go, Dr. Jeffrey, where can people find out about you? Where would you, if they went directly to you? This will all be in the show notes, but give a quick, how can people find you directly?
Thank you. Two ways. One, just as my name is spelled on the screen. So at jeffreymagee.com is my talent development company. What I do, B2B and B2C, and a lot of resources on there you can consume. My media company is professionalperformancemagazine.com. Professionalperformancemagazine.com. Every quarter I do a publication for now 30 years. We go out and get phenomenal global personalities to write articles on pure performance, achievement, and success. We don't do feature stories on stupid questions about what's going on. Just as you've done today, you've asked hard-hitting questions, and I love it. So it's phenomenal. We've had the last 4 presidents of the United States have written for me: global leaders, pro athletes, celebrities, military generals, New York Times bestselling authors, Indian tribal chiefs, etc. So I always
and even David Horsager.
And David, several times, and you always got that open invitation. Anytime you send an article, you're in, baby.
All right. Oh, thank you. So it's the Trusted Leader Show. Dr. Jeffrey Magee, who's a leader you trust and why?
I'm not going to answer that one because no matter how you say it, we're going to get in trouble. So I'll answer it this way. The person you follow should truly walk the talk. And that's the problem we have. A lot of people answer that, but it's too easy to say, Warren Buffett. I had a chance to interview him years ago. Phenomenal person, Warren Buffett. Well, what's that really mean? So, I could say Oprah Winfrey, or I could say, a name no one's ever heard of. So I would really challenge our viewers on that one. Who do you really trust that truly does influence how you think and feel? I've got a lot of those names, but that's a powerful question you've asked.
Well, I think that's the point of it too, is it's not about them. It's really about how do we become a trusted leader, and not just a trusted leader. We call that the show, the book, and everything else, but is it better to be trusted or trustworthy? Of course, you can manipulate the 8 pillars of trust or other things to look trusted without actually being worthy of it. And what we're really going for at the end of the day is trustworthiness in our...
Zig Ziglar would be the name if I have to put it out there, because Zig Ziglar, for those of you who don't know him, you can Google him. But I was sitting in a workshop in Charlotte, North Carolina many years ago. The gentleman comes in, sits down next to me in a suit. Have no idea who he is. He's obviously at that time mathematically old enough to be my father. Doing a program. The person up front calls on him. And he starts to answer, and there's only one Zig Ziglar voice on the planet. As soon as he starts answering, I'm going, holy moly, I'm sitting next to one of the gods of management, leadership, trust, integrity. And from that came almost a 20-year mentorship friendship. He wrote the foreword to 2 of my books. He wrote in every issue of my magazine. Before he passed away, he reached out to me and he sent me a zip file of 77 articles that had never been published that he gifted to me. So in every issue of my magazine, the last page, last article is still from the great Zig Ziglar. So if you're going to push me for a name, Mr. Ziglar is a man of integrity, and I'll go with him.
And he doesn't do it all the time, but I was fortunate to have him meet him several times before he left, became friends of the family and all that before he passed away. But he also endorsed my first book, Trust Edge, and just honored by that. So, well, this has been a whole lot of fun. There's a lot more wisdom. We're going to have to bring back Dr. Jeffrey Magee. We've never brought anybody back, but we're going to have to bring you back sometime before long.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you this summer. And so that has been the Trusted Leader Show. Until next time, stay trusted.